It's Christine Wilson and Saphira Galoob, and you'll thank us later. Tune in every week and hang out with us because we're a lot of fun.
And no topics off the record, we decided. We are open to talking about everything together with a bit of a sense of humor, a lot of self-forgiveness, a lot of grace, and always being wiser on the other end. Bring it on, girls and boys.
You know what? You'll thank me later that I'm telling you about this. You'll thank me. They're going to hate us, Saphira. It's going to be nuts.
Well, hello to podcast world, and hello to my dear friends, Christine and Nicole.
Hello. How are you?
Well, I'm good today. But I think today's topic reflects kind of where I've been over the last couple of weeks. So how are you guys?
I mean, I'm doing okay. I've got a lot of work to do. Courtney's in Paris living the high life right now.
Best life. Yeah, I love
So
that.
I have to pretend like I know what she does every day and do it, which is not really my strength.
Yeah.
So I'm learning again how to do my job. And Nicole, you've been busy. You've been really nuts this week.
Yeah, I don't have enough hours in the day is how I feel right now. So
Yeah. And we are off Monday for MLK Day, which means that we do work that Friday. We don't take that Friday off, but technically, we're off on Fridays, although I'm working tomorrow because I've got so much to do.
yeah.
So it's like these privileges that are wonderful, but there are times where it comes to a head where we have to look at ourselves and say,
Was this the right?
no, it's just we got to do the work. I
Yeah.
mean, it just
Well,
means the work has to be done and we may have to work on a Friday.
Well, and
then-
everybody knows that when you're getting ready to go on vacation, there's a lot to do before you do it. So, and then when you come back from vacation, there's a lot to catch up with. So I call it that vacation sandwich stress.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that's a really good bridge in today, because today we decided to talk about anxiety. I will say that this could be an entire podcast topic and not a podcast day. And it took me a bit of courage to say, hey, Nicole and Christine, let's talk about anxiety, because anxiety is a topic that I think is ubiquitous, even if you don't admit it. And it is ubiquitous. It's part of the human condition. It is particularly prevalent in today's day and age with people who are striving for professional growth and personal growth and all of the things that challenge how we manage our time and our relationships and so forth. But it's particularly, I think, relevant now for us because there's a lot of uncertainty in what's happening with next week, starting next week, politically for us in DC. But also, I think it just is like, even as we get a little bit wiser in our age, I want to talk a little bit about, how our anxiety has changed over the decades and how we manage through it. Because I don't think you can turn it on and turn it off. I think you have to manage through it. So that is the topic for today. And yeah, I'm excited and a little bit nervous because we are a tell-all podcast. We are a tell-all podcast. I'll say it that's hard to say, and it requires a bit of courage to dig deep inside and share with our listeners what's really going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine you have a little anxiety about talking about anxiety. I am really lucky that I come from a household where things like depression and anxiety were just open conversation, and it was not something to be shameful of. And it was also something to seek medical care, medication, therapy. I also have a psychology degree, so I also understand that it really should be nothing to be ashamed of. Just like I would not be ashamed if I had a kidney disease, I wouldn't hide that. Um, but I have been very open I think on our conversation we just had about alcohol. One of the things I talked about was that one of my main driving factors for drinking alcohol was to help calm my anxiety. So I was formally diagnosed with anxiety in my late 20s, but I did have a point at which in college where I left school for a bout of depression. And I'm pretty sure probably in my records at the time, there was some indicators of the anxiety and depression. And it also runs in my family. So genetically, it was not a big surprise. But the biggest thing for me that I've come to be more aware of in going through the process of having my son privately diagnosed with ADHD And me being a very big part of that was that being my own ADHD diagnosis, and the fact that oftentimes females specifically are diagnosed with anxiety rather than ADHD because the two overlap. So, a big common trait of women with ADHD is that they have anxiety and depression. And they also mask a lot of the symptoms that would make it easier for someone to figure out that they had ADHD to begin with. And also there's this big common this misconception that ADHD was little boys that ran around the classroom and caused chaos, that it wasn't necessarily something that girls had. So, I would guess that my anxiety is a component of all of that. Um, and it's probably something that I've dealt with my whole life, and I found a lot of coping mechanisms. But when I got my formal diagnosis of anxiety in my 20s, that is when I coupled therapy with medication. So I am on Lexapro. I've done really well on Lexapro, and I have gone up and down depending on life's challenges and where I've felt my ability to deal with my anxiety has been. Um, and this past year, 2024, was a really anxious year for me. My parents went through a lot. My dad's health was not great. We had some health issues in our family. And so I went back up to the higher level. And I always say it's literally been my lifesaver. I don't think I could enjoy life nearly as much as I do without that medication. So I am a super open book about it. I am an evangelist for people taking care of their mental health, and that they should be open to all treatments, and they may not always be the right one forever, that you should try something and then maybe try something else. But I think without Lexapro, I just can't even imagine where my life would be right now. So,
Yeah. I'm so glad that you have found kind of a way to not be so kind of I don't know what the word is, but like you're not looking at your anxiety as either a weakness or a vulnerability. You're looking at it as an aspect of your overall humanity, and the Lexapro piece kind of is one of the connective tissue that connects your ADHD also as your superpower. Because one of the things we were talking about in preparation for this is, society doesn't necessarily identify individuals with ADHD as being like a positive trait, but there are, I mean, some of the people I know, and I am probably not diagnosed with ADHD, but probably have like, I'm probably textbook, they could walk in, have a 5 minute call with me and be like, oh yeah, you are. But I've just been, I've coped with it and used it kind of to my advantage and surrounded myself, as we talked about it, with a team to help support. I
yes,
call it my wake. I'm not a shitty person, but I leave a lot of shit in my wake.
right, right. And you need people to help clean it up.
I need to be able to help clean my wake. But I do think that, and I think you shared with me that there is kind of a growing momentum in social channels where people are starting to talk about ADHD through a lens that's positive.
Yep.
And I'm really relieved about that because, the way that we navigate through life as humans, there's just such narrow lanes for that. And now that people understand, even like neurodifferentiators in learning styles, that's already kind of getting a reframed narrative. But people whose brains just operate differently. I mean, my husband's an engineer and he is very sequential and linear. And we talk about one thing and then we talk about another. We do one thing, then we do another. I think about all things, talk about all things, do all things
At the same time,
at the same time. But that's the
in
way
the
my
same
brain
sentence.
but
Yep.
that's the way my brain processes. Like that's what the movies. It's like imagine going to a movie theater with 10 movies all in the same theater. And it just
Mhm.
happens to be like from where I'm oriented. And so I can't help that I mean, I am quite focused considering I'm in a movie theater with 10 movies going on, but it is is the world diagnosing me right now with ADHD?
Well, I mean, I've read all the books now since my diagnosis, and I'm going to tell you, I mean, there are things that I see in you that remind me of me, right? We lead
Well, that's a huge
organizations.
compliment. I will tell you that is a huge compliment for me.
Oh, well, we're leaders of organizations where we can do big ideas and all lots of ideas. But if we didn't have the people to actually implement, make sure
Yeah,
the details got taken care of, all of
yeah,
that, we would just be spitting out a whole lot of ideas and nothing would
Yeah.
ever happen. I mean,
Now, actually,
where would
I'm
we
actually
go?
I'm a very detailed oriented person in terms of, so I've got the big idea, but when it comes to execution, I don't want there to be any thread off. Like
Mhm.
I will say, I know that this is above and beyond, but if it's not like this, it's not perfect. So I do have an eye for detail in terms of execution. I'm just
But you're
not
not the one doing all those things.
correct. I'm not the executor. I just
Yeah.
want it executed
Oh,
perfectly.
yeah.
Let
I
me
want
just be
the, yeah.
honest. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
also, we're not good with criticism because of who we
What,
are.
what,
So,
what's that word? Excuse me.
yeah,
Excuse me.
we don't like
I'm so
it.
sorry. Excuse me. I don't know that word. You're speaking
Yeah.
another language, aren't you now?
That's why it has to be implemented perfectly because the criticism will destroy us.
You,
And so you need a really talented, capable staff. And
right.
also, I mean, here's the thing though, you and I both do this. We can hyper focus on something and go deep into it, but
Mhm.
you then lose us for everything else. Right.
Right.
So I mean, like if I decide I'm gonna do something super, I'm so
Yeah.
excited. It's got my brain
Yeah.
jazzed, all the bells are
Yeah.
ringing. Okay,
Yeah.
great, I'm in. But now you've lost me for everything else.
Yeah.
I forget to eat. I forget to go on calls. I'm gone. You've lost
Yeah.
me. So the hyper focus has to be careful. But I think one of the things that I would guess Nicole is going to talk about that's very different depending on her comfort in talking about it. But I think that our anxiety is probably coupled with this ADHD and with our behavior and our personalities, is different than what Nicole has anxiety about.
I would
So
agree.
Nicole, I won't speak for you, but I know some things about your anxiety.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are definitely things that you guys said that I resonate with in terms of like, criticism and that drive for, I think my anxiety, I think I would be organized without it, but I have anxiety and I always have. And I think that's something that has driven me being more organized and having the plan. Like, I am the person who I will look up where to park and what the menu is. Like, if I don't know those things, I'm going to be anxious about it. Like, I have more of like the generalized anxiety where it could be social, it could be work, it could be whatever it is. So there are things that you said that I like can relate to, but I think my anxiety like stems or like pushes me almost in a different direction where I have to over plan, over prepare, over, organize for all the things versus like I don't know that I get on the one track, but I definitely relate to the I'm watching 10 movies at the same time. And I'll have the same conversation with my husband. He'll look at me and go, our brains are very different, like at least once a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that like while he'll have moments of anxiety, like he doesn't have generalized anxiety, which is something that, like diagnosed with, sit with that. And it's something that I wasn't diagnosed until my later 20s, but I realized I had anxiety in college. And then I looked back on the rest of my life. There were moments from childhood that I was like, oh, that's what that was,
Mhm.
instead of like, my family couldn't relate to it. Or, they were like, I don't understand why you like, what are you freaking out about? Not that they understand it now because I'm like, oh, did you know I have anxiety? But they put more effort into trying or putting themselves like in my shoes. Um, so it's
So
definitely an interesting thing to navigate.
so I'm kind of curious about, and I'll put it out to you, Saphira, first, but like when your anxiety is on the rise, like how do you feel? How do you know?
Yeah.
And if you feel it on the rise, do you have skills to keep it from going to a point of no return, or do you
Yeah.
just know you're on the roller coaster to ride it out?
Yeah. So it's interesting because it kind of depends. So I know that my anxiety is on the rise when I feel like I don't feel safe in my own voice and in my own skin. So I don't have generalized anxiety and I've never been diagnosed with anxiety. I have situational anxiety.
Mhm.
And I don't even know if that's a term. I just coined it, but you guys know
Yeah.
I'm all about the Saphira-isms. So let's not be afraid of that. And what I can tell is that, like, so if Nicole or you or Christine were to call me with a situation that was causing you a complex situation that had personality elements and, complex egos, I could help you suss it out and sort it out and sequence a communication and set up a tone and a narrative that would give you literally a script to get from where you are now towards the end of that script. But when I'm in the middle of it, I lose that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm aware that I don't have perspective. And that makes me really nervous because then I get where I feel like I can't present like how do I want to show up what I want to accomplish. That's kind of always one thing that my coach, my amazing coach Kathy Crow from Golden Coaching, taught me. Like, how do you want to show up? What do you want to accomplish? I lose that vantage point. And so that then kind of puts me in like where I feel like I'm standing in unsettled territory, not in quicksand, but in unsettled territory.
Yeah.
Now, my coping mechanisms are usually dependent. One of them is to one, slow down, because if I am anxious, I can respond emotionally, and that is not a good thing. So, one, slow down. Two, um, elongate the time for me to decide kind of how I respond. So that's there's a slowdown in terms of me not jumping out and trying to like fix it, but to let it reveal itself a little bit more, because time for me will allow me some perspective, and that is when I reach out. Because and I have decided, and I will tell you, I have decided my entire reference point of gratitude is when I know who will show up for me. And, Christine, you showed up for me over the holidays when I had kind of this initial bout of what's happening to me now. And I have about 5 to 7 people, depending on what's going on in my life, who I go, I need you to show up for me. I don't do it very often, but
Right.
when I call them, they know I'm in trouble. And I
Yeah.
always try to, so this is something that I think is also important if you are a person who has ongoing bouts of anxiety. It takes a lot of energy to interface with somebody who you love who has anxiety. So, one, be careful about how much you're imposing on somebody. That's number one. Number two, be mindful that their point of reference on what's going on in their life relative to yours may be situational, like, or perspective wise. Like, I have a really dear friend going through a very terrible divorce. When I call her and I say, I've got I'm mindful that she actually may be in her own little quandary. Or I have a friend who's got an illness in the family, and like my shit is not, no one's dying. I'm just
Right.
upset about this because I cannot. So I'm super mindful of that there. And then when I call to ask for help with anxiety, I'm saying, this is my problem. I'm anxious about it. What do you think? And then I shut up. I don't use that person as a dumping ground for my
Right.
irritation. I call them and say, this is the problem I need solved. Do you have 10 minutes? Let's solve it in 10. And then I step away, because being an anxiety producing machine, that is not a fun person to have in your life. And I
Right.
don't want to be that person. So I try to be super strategic about my outreach. I will say there's one other thing that I do that is like my dad taught me this, and that is I take my notebook that I always have. I always have a notebook, and I always start with a clean piece of paper because you got to start each day with a clean sheet of paper. And on the right, I put everything that I feel like I can do that I can control. And then I feel on the left, I put everything that needs to be done that I cannot control. And then
Mhm.
the next day, the stuff I can control, I put on the right, and I transfer this. I know this needs to be done, but I can't control it.
Yep.
It's there. I have written it down. I have said I cannot control this. I'm seeing it, but somehow the act of writing it down on the left side of the paper, it is a very tactile experience. And I don't know that it calms my anxiety, but it puts some objectivity to it, if I can say it in that
Mhm.
way. And then
Mhm.
the final thing I will say is that I know that everything is temporary. I
Right.
will get through my anxiety. It is wicked unpleasant for me. It is wicked unpleasant for the people around me, but I do know I will come out the other side. So staying resilient and staying positive is kind of like my mantra on it. So those are my three little things. There's
Love
a
it. I mean,
lot there. There's a lot there.
yeah, well, I would like to tease some of it out. I think one of the things that I have done, I remember during some pretty anxious moments in my life, my mom or my dad saying, I promise you 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, you will not even be able to recall this. You won't be, write it down now and you'll go back and you'll be like, what was that thing? And that is hard in the moment to be able to, but as you get older, you see that prove out more and more, and it can give you a little bit of perspective. Like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, remember that time when I thought the world was going to end and I was so anxious? I will say back to my aura ring again, but that has been a big indicator of me having more insight into my anxiety and how my behavior changes with my anxiety. So, it's tracking my stress levels. And I can see when I am short with people, when my responses are not thoughtful, when I get into an argument with my mother or my spouse or I'm annoyed with the kids, oftentimes that stress level is pretty high, which means in general for me that means my anxiety is rearing. I don't always know why my anxiety's up, and that's one of the interesting things is I've had to learn to be more reflective. Usually it's out of any sort of uncertainty. So like a lot of clients haven't paid their bills and I'm getting anxious about cash flow. So I'm not actually in a moment where I have to pay a bill I can't pay, but I am feeling that niggling, this is making me stressed out. I know month after month it all works out every single month, but that anxiety bubbles, right? And I can become much harder to just just to talk to in a way that's calm. Um, if I am in a bad place with someone that means something to me in my life, that gets my anxiety going, and it can last for days. Um, I've learned that just with perimenopause, my anxiety can fluctuate throughout the month. And I don't know if it's now because my cycle's all whacked out and all over the place and my hormones are moving at different times and changes. I don't know. But I can see little blips of trends in anxiety that isn't always relatable just back to a circumstance that happened that day that I can trace. Um, so I also, when things are out of order, I have anxiety. So the need, like right now, I know my bed upstairs, the sheets are stripped and they're in the washer, but there's no new sheets on the bed. To walk away from that was really hard. That was like I don't leave my bedroom with the bed unmade. That does not happen. And it will be a thing in the back of my mind all day until I go and put it where it belongs. Now, do I have piles of crap in my room? Yes, but they are a defined place for a pile of crap. So that is in its place, even though it shouldn't be. Like if a home decorator saw it, they'd lose their mind. But I have defined it as the place for the pile of crap.
Yeah.
But the shoes should be put away. The hat should be put away. Like I know there's some hats that fell in my closet. They're on the floor right now because I can't reach. That's been like 2 days. I know that's one of the things contributing to everything feeling
Christine,
out
we
of
are the
place.
same human. I mean, I am getting to know you so well on this podcast. Hey, people in podcast land, if there's somebody you love, but you want to get to know them more, do a podcast with them.
Yeah.
It is so fantastic. I
Yeah.
mean, we
Everything
do not
should
have
be
the
in its
luxury. We
place.
don't have the luxury of like we don't actually we do have the time. We don't take the time to sit and get to know each other in this way.
Well,
It's
yeah.
really sweet. It's
Well,
really
because it's also weird. Can you imagine if every friend I went up to, I was like, let me tell you about the hats on the floor of my closet. They're causing me anxiety today.
I have to bring, as an aside, I have to bring you over and show you my new closet because everything has a place and there's a place for everything. You're going to love it, love it, love it, love it, love it.
Love it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Love it.
Separate issue. See,
But
see how
but
the movie's playing in my head? You see what just happened there, friends?
no,
That is
but
what
I do think
happens.
orderliness is a big
Yeah.
piece, and what you choose to make your order with, right? Some people
Yeah.
it's physical items, people it's different, but they are techniques that you use to calm your anxiety because the more I can control and feel like is in its proper place, the better. So like when one of my kids is having a rough time, that just bubbles and circulates in my brain as an anxiety point. And my mother is the same way. And I will tell her, my little thing that I'm dealing with right now is not your problem. Stop being anxious about it and stop worrying about it. And she'll be like, but I can't because when my children
It's in
are
her contract.
suffering,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's in her contract. She can't,
right. And
yeah.
and I can see my kids' annoyance with the same thing. I'll be like, did that get worked out? Is it okay? And they're like, yeah, whatever. Leave me
Yeah.
alone. I'm like, oh,
My problem.
I've been stressing about it.
NYP, not your problem.
But I will say overall, the Lexapro has given me a new baseline for anxiety. So the way I described it to my psychiatrist was that I had ping pong balls in my head, which actually probably should have been an indicator of ADHD, but Every one of the ping pong balls was a different thing I was dealing with. They were bouncing around. I couldn't figure out which one to focus on, and they never stayed still long enough for me to deal with them. And that there was a red alarm bell and light going off all the time. High alert, a ping pong ball is coming. Grab it, fix it, deal with it. Oh my God, high alert, another one's coming, another one's coming. And that's how I felt like I lived life 90% of the time. And so I was always in a state of activation and I could never prioritize. I could never figure out what I was going to deal with first. And so there was never a lessening of the anxiety because it was just so hard to even figure out what it was I was trying to calm down.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went on the Lexapro, I said to him, I was like, it is the first time in God knows how long that alarm is not going off.
It's
I
amazing.
The ping pong balls are still sort of bouncing,
Yeah.
but there is no alarm distracting me and scaring me all the time.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think that is I'm not dopey, I'm not drugged, I'm not unemotional, I'm not I don't just have no anxiety. I mean, that was all like I remember people being like, I don't want to be like a robot and have no feelings. I'm like, oh my God, it's just gotten me to a baseline where I can manage and I'm
Yeah.
not crazy and losing it and feeling anxious to just get up in the morning. So um yeah, so anyways, for me that's been the mover forward. So Nicole, I think you look very thoughtful right now.
But I was just thinking, because like I can obviously relate to situational anxiety, but then from like my generalized anxiety, I related to you, Christine, when you said there are times that I don't know why I'm anxious or I can't pinpoint it. And that's caused an interesting kind of back and forth relationship with my husband because he'll want to know like what's wrong because he can tell. I wear my emotions on my face. If I'm upset, angry, sad, whatever it is, you're gonna know it, even if I don't say it.
Mhm.
I literally cannot hide it. And so he'll say, like, what's wrong? And I'll look at him and I'll say, I don't know. And he cannot understand how that is even an option. And
Yeah.
so I'll have to tell him, like, I'm still processing whatever it is. And once I figure it out, I promise we'll have this conversation. But right now, you asking me what's wrong and me not being able to identify it just makes it worse. So let
Yeah.
it be that in 10 minutes, I'll come back and we can talk about this. And so like for me, when I'm really anxious, there are things that I've learned to do. Whether it's the to-do list, like writing down whatever's in my head, could just be a thought, could be a to-do, could be whatever, and then organized by like, what can I get done right now? What are my priorities? What is really not an alarm bell that is acting like one? And then I've been using like the like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Count down 5 seconds and then set a timer for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, and go do something. Whether that's something on my to-do list, because oftentimes I've built it up to be like this
Yes.
monumental task that ends up taking me not even 2 minutes to do.
Right.
So it's like setting that alarm of, all right, 30 minutes of these, whatever it is, go on a walk, do the laundry, you know, prep dinner, whatever the thing is. And then I'm always shocked at like, oh, that didn't take that long. And I feel so much better, so it's that countdown of like, don't put it off for 10 more minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then give yourself X amount of time to do something, whether it's exercise, writing the things down, the actual task. And that for me has really helped because it gives me like a less excuse action versus just continuing to like shunt whatever off. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Like I think that's for me, that's one of
Yeah.
the big things. And then of course, like exercise, like we were talking about before we started recording, I have a walking pad in my office. I don't always use it, but when I am motivated to, and I actually walk on it during the workday, especially like busy weeks like this, it really makes a difference. Because otherwise I just let the overwhelming to-do list bubble. And I'm also
Mhm.
someone that internalizes, like I'm not the first person to say, hi, I'm drowning. I need help. So it's one working on those, but also like the movement, the countdown to the list and not letting my list become my existence.
Yeah.
Yes.
The biggest things really for me.
I'd actually like to talk about this when you just said the overwhelming, like not saying that you're overwhelmed, because I think this is actually another kind of you'll thank us later piece. And this is a little, we are normalizing being able to talk about anxiety. We're normalizing being able to talk about ADHD. I actually, though, I'm going to say something that I think is crucial as you're building your brand in your professional workplace. Um, I think, with the exception of certain work environments, most people in your work world have a very small appetite to receive information about ongoing struggles related to anxiety or fatigue, or because that, I mean, so here's the thing is that I'm going through a bit of a phase right now, and I'm super mindful about it, right? That as I talk to people, like, how are you doing? If every time they ask me how I'm doing, I lead with like something negative, like I'm stressed out or I'm anxious, like then I actually start to get a reputation of an anxious person.
Right.
So I actually think it's a very delicate balance and a double-edged sword. And there is a privacy piece. Like I am saying, yeah, you can normalize it, but I am not saying that I think it is normalized.
Yeah, and also don't make it your identity,
Yeah,
right? Like it's I mean, I will tell you, there have been some people that have worked at M2M that took the open door and the very open conversations that we are willing to have and took advantage of it, right? And used it as their therapy, as their way. And Nicole knows this. Nicole
I
has
actually
managed
a
people that,
therapist.
yeah, and where the person was crying, the person was talking about what they wanted, and it wasn't anything that we could change for their work. It wasn't the work that was it was circumstances, maybe a diagnosis and medication that needed to happen, or other things. But they really began to make it hard to separate the work and the personal
yeah.
struggles that the person, this is
Yeah.
many people, by the way. This is not one
Yeah, I know.
particular
No, I
person.
think, let me tell you, I think this is a really common dilemma
Yeah.
because if we are trying to make it okay to discuss something that has had a stigma in the past, then you would think that you'd be able to say, yeah, I like if I have a disease, I can say, how are you feeling today? And if you had a disease that manifested in joint aches, you'd be like, oh, today I've got inflammation, so I'm a little off my game. You would never blame that person because they have been
Right.
diagnosed with it. You wouldn't fault them for articulating that their physicality was in some sort of a challenged place. But I'm sorry to say, or I'm not sorry to say, but this is a reality. I think if you showed up more times than not and kind of articulated being anxious, you would start to get a reputation of being an anxious person. And then I think that limits you and people's confidence in you. So
Yeah.
I mean, actually, the real balance is to be able to demonstrate to be, and this is actually where I am right now, is to have a very a difficult thing happen to you, and to be able to get through it with enough authenticity so it doesn't look like you're a big faker,
Yeah.
but but to be measured and mature enough to orient the way you interact with your professional environment so it doesn't actually change any great reputation that you've earned over in the past. So, and that means sometimes you got to like show up more positive than you feel. You got to like, and this is something that I've been really working on. Like, if I'm going to say something out loud about something or somebody or situation, would all the people who were the subject matter of that, if they were in the room, what would they think?
Right.
So if I want to talk about it, how can I talk about it in a way that anybody who would be party to that wouldn't feel like I was saying it in a way that was negative towards them or negative about them? Like, so I'm going through something organizationally, and I'm saying, this is the first time my organization has changed in a way that is meaningful. This is a lot of growth for me. I'm really learning a lot about myself and my personality as a leader that I think is going to make me stronger, but sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but I'll work through it. That I feel like could be published on the front page of the New York Times,
Right. Right.
as
Same.
opposed to some of the things that are going through my head sometimes.
Right. That feel well,
But it's
yeah.
really, though, it's a really delicate balance because you want to show up as yourself, and again, you'll thank us later. We're trying to normalize things, we're trying to be honest about things. But I think even in an environment where you want to show up and be honest, in a professional environment, there are certain kind of, I don't want to use the word rules, but kind of Mm, mm, I
Well,
mean,
here's the thing. Everybody that I work with knows I've been diagnosed with anxiety. They do not see me and I do not behave as an anxious person, nor do I push my anxiety onto others, nor do I even really talk about it that much. I like to make jokes about my ADHD because I think it's funny sometimes when I will
yeah,
change the subject in the middle of a sentence and you can watch their faces go, "What just happened?"
yeah,
Wait, she's talking about her new bathroom light and we were just going over a client, so I can make fun of that because there's an understanding and they all are in
right,
on the joke. But
right.
but here's the other thing. I'm generally not really an anxious person because I've done things to deal with my anxiety. So the
Yeah,
Lexapro is my baseline, but there's a lot of anxiety on top of that. And that's where I think I remember you guys might remember we talked about the Feeling Good Handbook is one of my tools to use cognitive behavioral therapy techniques to help deal with my anxiety. And it's a lot of like what you guys were talking about, making lists. For me, lists can actually increase my anxiety.
right,
Sometimes they help. It depends. If they're very achievable tasks and I can just
yeah,
get them down in a list and I can do them, that's one thing. If they're really big feelings that are not easily resolved, writing them down actually causes me almost like a paralysis. I cannot, that makes it real. It's like I almost have to keep it in this nebulous back of my brain space. So, like, let's say I had a falling out with a good friend and it's causing me a lot of anxiety and I am not ready to take an action or do anything about it. I cannot see that written down. That's just
yeah,
like fuel on the fire for me. Um, but if it's like fix this thing on the website and write this thing for the client, I can put that on there, get it done in my to-dos. So those are some of them. But a lot of them, is also just reframing what is the most dire consequence of the outcome of this and realizing that it's really not going to break me. So I have to go to that place where I have to really sit and go through the scenarios. This could play out this way, or this way.
yeah.
All three of them will not kill
I'm
me.
really, really glad that you just mentioned that because the relationship between uncertainty, anxiety, and fear are so crucial. And
Mhm.
this whole
Yes.
fear, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And, usually in a professional environment, the worst thing that can happen is I could lose my job. I could lose my reputation. I could, so I think actually saying, okay, well, let's play it out. What happened if I completely, how would I? And I do think that as long as someone isn't dying, and you're not having a sickness, honest to God, like it's resolvable. Like besides health issues,
Yeah.
it's probably resolvable. Maybe not ideal, maybe not without some changed priorities,
Yeah.
but we really do forget. I had a very dear family friend whose husband was diagnosed with brain cancer and he was sick for a long time and he just recently died. And I mean, like another client whose son and daughter-in-law had asthma and died, like, come on, sometimes I need to look at myself in the mirror and being like, you need to get some perspective here, sister. And I have to
Yeah.
tell that to myself because my pity parties, man, I can throw a pretty nice, impressive one
I
about
mean,
things.
and
Yeah,
here's the other thing that I always say. You have not only a college degree, but a graduate degree, a Juris Doctorate. No one can take those away.
right.
You are employable to
Yes.
make a living to feed and shelter and house yourself for the rest of your life. There is no way you will starve on the streets without a major mental illness or something like that. You are employable. It may
Right.
not be running your business. So I
Right.
say that to myself. If I had to, if all of a sudden my family threw me out, my job went away, I'm on my own, I can find a way to survive. Like and I
Right.
know that's so extreme. You're like, we're surviving on the streets now, but
No, no, no.
really when it comes down
I
to it,
actually think creating these really like what's the worst that can happen, and honestly, like saying that out loud, okay, let's go there. What could the worst could happen? And I will
yeah,
say the other thing that has helped me through this is that like I have recreated myself multiple times in my life, and each time I'm a little bit better at it.
right.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm going to need to recreate myself. Hopefully, I won't. I think everything hopefully will be okay. But if I do, I actually have a pretty big treasure trove of love, support, and kind of cheerleaders, professional, personal, emotional cheerleaders around me that I have no idea what it would be, but I will tell you in the 3 different things I've done, I didn't know what I was going to do either. So there's that. But
We're gonna
I
go
just,
open a cute little store right on your street in Sawyer, and we're gonna just make enough money to live and drink coffee and hang
Giovanni
out.
wants to do a taco truck, a portable taco truck on the beach, and I actually already have the name of it. And we're going to have folks in roller skates deliver the
Yes,
tacos, the people up and down the street. How fun would that be?
I love it.
I
Okay,
know.
see, you're fine. You're gonna survive. You'll
See,
be just fine.
yeah, yeah,
But I do think that one of the big key factors to anxiety is you can't always see the obvious within the
yeah,
emotion and the feeling. Um, I was gonna mention just sort of what are my big telltale signs that I'm anxious.
yeah,
I get obviously my heart beats a little bit faster, my breathing is a little bit shallower. I'm not talking about full on panic attacks because I've had those too, but this is more just I'm noticing anxiety rising.
yeah,
And for me, I have a hard time um, figuring out within like a whole list of things that are causing me stress, which is the actual trigger. So I think that listing kind of thing is oftentimes that's really where that benefit comes in because then you might realize it wasn't actually that you just got in the fight with your husband about the trash. It's actually this much bigger thing that's underlying that. And the fight with your husband about the trash was a symptom of your heightened energy and
yeah,
your lack of patience because of that.
yeah,
So I do think the listing is very good there. But and I do think that now that I have indicators of my stress level actually being up in the Aura Ring, I think that's also good for me to notice and be able to say to someone, you know what, I've got to take a step back here. I'm not going to be in a good place right now. I can tell I'm already reacting negatively to something that doesn't really need it. And I know it's about me and it's not about you or this conversation. I'm just not in the right place for it. So, my mom and I have very similar personalities, and we can really set each other off very easily. And she said something the other day that would have normally set me off. And I was in a clear enough space that I just went, don't react. It's not worth it. And I kind of looked at her and I said, I don't want to do that. And
yeah,
she was like, okay. And she heard me and got it. And instead of me going, which then she feels attacked and criticized. So she gets her hackles up. And I didn't need to go to a big place. And I was able to just identify that the anxiety was already too high for that conversation. Um,
Well, and I'm impressed with you as we come to a close here. I'm impressed that you're able to have realization around it because I think um, it is true that we're never going to be able to stop the anxiety. But I think as we come to a kind of like, what are the main takeaways? What is having some sort of very predictable way to recognize your own anxiety? So that's number
yeah.
one. Two, what are your personal and effective coping mechanisms? And when do you need to reach out for help?
Hmm.
And those, I think just those one, two, threes,
Yep.
is kind of part of the rhythm of being in an anxiety life. Like we are all going to have it. We're none of us can avoid it. So inevitably knowing that, what is the plan for recognizing it, managing it, and reaching out for help? And those are, I think, non-negotiable for everybody in a world where we are running as fast as we are and pushing as hard as we are. And if we can do that, I think it can assure some sanity and hopefully assure a sense that this will not kill you. It will just make you stronger.
I love it. That's very wise. And if anybody ever is really overwhelmed with reaching out for help and they want to talk, I'm happy to be there for them.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
Absolutely.
I'm wishing you both a non-anxious day. I'm going to go open my Asana and write down my to-dos because right before this call, I was like, I'm drowning. I have so much. Oh my gosh. It's just because I hadn't written it down. I'm going to go write it down. I'm going to take a deep breath. It's all going to be fine.
Well,
I
and the
love
best
it.
feeling is when you click the done and it
Done.
plays out. That's
Done.
amazing.
All right, guys. Well, have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. You too.